Hey there. Before I start this wild story, let me ask you something fun. Where are you reading this from today? Drop it in the comments below. Oh, and if you like cool stories that grab you and don't let go, make sure to stick around. This one's about me, Sam, and a sneaky lady named Karen who messed with the wrong kid. Ready? Here we go. Picture this, I'm just a regular kid named Sam. I live in a small town where everybody knows everybody. It's one of those places where you wave at your neighbors, and the dogs bark at the mailman every single day. Life was super simple for me. I went to school, hung out with my friends, and had this awesome little garden in my backyard. That garden? It was my special spot. I grew the best corn you've ever tasted. Seriously. Everyone who tried it said it was sweet and crunchy like candy you could eat right off the cob. My friends would come over after school, and we'd sit there munching on it, laughing and telling silly jokes. It was the best. But then, there was this one big problem. Her name was Karen. Oh, Karen. She lived right next door to me, and let me tell you, she was trouble. Not the kind of trouble like breaking windows or yelling super loud, nah, she was sneakier than that. She acted like my corn belonged to her. Yup, you heard me right. My corn. The corn I planted, watered, and took care of all by myself. Every single day, I'd look out my window and see her sneaky self creeping over the fence. She'd grab big handfuls of my corn with this huge, smug grin on her face, like she was the queen of everything. Sam, it's just corn, she'd say, shrugging her shoulders like it was no big deal. Just corn? Just corn. Oh, that made me so mad every time she said it. To her, maybe it was nothing. But to me? It was everything. I worked hard for that corn. I'd wake up early before school to water it. I'd pull out all the weeds that tried to grow around it. I'd even talk to it sometimes like, grow big and strong, little corn. Because I heard plants like that. It wasn't just corn to me. It was my corn. My pride. My little piece of awesome in this world. The first time I caught her, I couldn't believe my eyes. I was sitting on my porch, eating a peanut butter sandwich, when I saw her head pop up over the fence. She looked left, then right, like she was checking if anyone was watching. Then zip, she hopped over, quick as a bunny, and started picking my corn. Her hands were fast, yanking the cobs off the stalks like it was some kind of race. I dropped my sandwich and ran outside, yelling, "Hey! That's mine." She didn't even flinch. She just turned around, smiled that big smug grin, and said, "Oh, Sam, don't be so stingy. There's plenty here." Then she walked off, munching on my corn like it was her afternoon snack. I stood there, my mouth open, watching her go. Stingy? Me? I wasn't stingy. I shared my corn with my friends all the time. I even gave some to old Mr. Jenkins down the street because he said it reminded him of when he was a kid. But Karen? She didn't ask. She didn't say please. She just took it. And that wasn't the only time. Oh no. It kept happening. Day after day, I'd see her sneaking over. Sometimes it was in the morning when I was getting ready for school. Sometimes it was at night when I was doing my homework. She'd grab a cob or two or five, and waltz back to her house like she'd won a prize. My mom noticed me getting grumpy about it. One day, she saw me staring out the window with my arms crossed, glaring at Karen as she hopped the fence again. "What's wrong, Sam?" she asked, putting a hand on my shoulder. I pointed at Karen and said, "She keeps stealing my corn." Mom looked out the window, watched Karen for a second, and then chuckled. "Oh, honey, she's just lonely. Maybe she doesn't have much to do." Lonely. Lonely. I didn't buy that for 1 second. Lonely people don't steal your stuff and then smile about it. Lonely people might knock on your door and say, "Hey, can I have some corn?" But Karen? She wasn't lonely. She was sneaky. And she was greedy. I tried talking to her about it once. I marched right over to her yard one afternoon, my hands in my pockets so I wouldn't look too mad. "Karen," I said, trying to sound calm, "why do you keep taking my corn? It's mine. I grew it." She was sitting on her porch, eating guess what, one of my cobs. She looked up at me, chewed real slow, and then said, "Sam, It's not a big deal. You've got tons of it. I'm just borrowing a little. Borrowing. Borrowing. You don't borrow corn. You don't borrow something you eat and then never give back. I wanted to yell, but I just took a deep breath and walked away. I didn't want to start a fight. Not yet. But inside, I was boiling. Every time I saw her hop that fence, it felt like she was laughing at me. Like she thought I was just some dumb kid who couldn't stop her. My friends started noticing too. One day, my buddy Tim came over and saw her sneaking off with a handful. "Whoa, Sam," he said, his eyes wide. "She's taking your corn again. Why don't you do something?" I shrugged and mumbled, "I don't know what to do." But that wasn't true. Deep down, I was starting to think about it. I was starting to get ideas. Ideas about how to make her stop. Ideas about how to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. See, I'm not the kind of kid who gives up easy. When I want something, I figure out how to get it. Like when I wanted a new bike last year, I saved up all my chore money for months and got it. Or when I wanted to win the spelling bee at school, I practiced every night until I could spell dictionary backwards. So Karen thinking she could just take my corn forever? Nope. That wasn't gonna fly with me. I started watching her closer. I'd peek out my window and see when she came over. It was usually around sunset, when the sky turned all orange and pink. She'd wait until she thought I wasn't looking, then boom, she'd strike. One time, I even hid behind a bush to spy on her. I wanted to see how she did it. She was fast, I'll give her that. She'd climb the fence like a squirrel, grab a few cobs, and hop back before you could blink. She'd hum a little song while she did it, like she was so proud of herself. That's when it hit me, she wasn't just taking my corn. She was enjoying it. She thought it was a game. A game she was winning. But games have rules, right? And I was about to change the rules. I didn't tell anyone what I was thinking yet. Not my mom, not my friends. This was my secret. My little plan. Because here's the thing, Karen had no idea what was coming. She thought I was just some kid who'd grumble and let her keep stealing. She thought she was smarter than me. But I had something up my sleeve. Something big. Something spicy. Oh yeah, spicy. I wasn't gonna fight her with yelling or tattling. I was gonna fight her with a trick. A trick so good, she'd never dare touch my corn again. Little did Karen know, I was brewing a plan in my head. A plan that would make her think twice. A plan that would turn her smug grin into a big, shocked face. I wasn't just mad anymore, I was excited. Because soon, she'd find out that stealing from Sam wasn't as easy as she thought. Something spicy was coming her way, and it was gonna be hilarious. But I'll tell you more about that later. For now, just picture me, a regular kid with a garden, staring out my window, smirking to myself. Karen had no clue what was about to hit her. And that was the best part of all. Okay, so you've met me, Sam, and you know about my awesome corn garden. But now, let's talk about the real trouble, Karen. Oh, Karen wasn't just annoying. Nope. She was way more than that. She was bold. Super bold. Like, imagine someone walking right into your house, grabbing your favorite snack from the fridge, and eating it in front of you with a big grin. That's what Karen did with my corn. She didn't even try to be sneaky about it anymore. She'd waltz into my yard like she owned the whole place, picking my corn while humming a loud, happy tune. She didn't care if I saw her. She didn't care if I heard her. It was like she wanted me to know she was taking it. The first time I really noticed how bold she was, I was sitting on my back porch with a glass of lemonade. It was a hot day, and I was just chilling, watching the clouds float by. Then I heard it hum a little song coming from my garden. I peeked over, and there she was. Karen. She had 1 foot over my fence, and her hands were already yanking corn off my plants. She didn't even look around to see if I was there. She just kept humming, loud and proud, like she was at a picnic or something. I jumped up so fast my lemonade spilled all over my shirt. Hey! I shouted, running toward her. That's my corn. You know what she did? She didn't run. She didn't say sorry. She just turned her head, looked right at me, and laughed. Laughed. Like I was some funny little kid telling a joke. She waved her hand at me, like I was a pesky fly buzzing around her head. "Oh, Sam," she said, her voice all sassy, "don't be such a baby about it." Then she grabbed another cob, tucked it under her arm, and strolled back to her yard, still humming that dumb song. I stood there, my fists clenched, watching her go. A baby? A baby? I wasn't a baby. I was mad. My mom saw the whole thing from the kitchen window. When I stormed inside, slamming the screen door behind me, she looked up from washing dishes and said, "What's got you so worked up, Sam?" I pointed out the window and shouted, "Karen. She's taking my corn again, and she doesn't even care." Mom dried her hands on a towel and walked over to look. Karen was already back in her yard, sitting on her porch, peeling my corn like it was hers. Mom tilted her head and said, "Oh, honey, she's just lonely. Maybe she doesn't have much going on." Lonely. Lonely. I crossed my arms and shook my head so hard my hair flopped in my face. "No way, Mom," I said. "Lonely people don't steal your stuff and then smile about it. Lonely people don't laugh when you tell them to stop." Mom just shrugged and went back to the sink. "Maybe she likes the company," she said, like that made any sense. But I wasn't buying it. Not for 1 second. Karen wasn't lonely. She was mean. She was greedy. And she thought she could do whatever she wanted because I was just a kid. Every time she took my corn, she'd say the same thing. "You've got plenty," she'd sneer, her voice all sharp and snotty. Plenty. Plenty. Oh, that made me so mad I could feel my face turn red. I didn't have plenty because she kept stealing it. I'd spent all summer growing that corn. All summer. When school was out, and my friends were at the pool or playing video games, I was out in the backyard. I'd dig little holes in the dirt with my hands, drop the seeds in, and cover them up. I'd carry a big watering can back and forth from the hose, splashing water on my sneakers because it was so heavy. I'd kneel in the mud, pulling out weeds so my corn could grow big and strong. That wasn't plenty. That was hard work. But Karen didn't care about that. She didn't care how much time I spent on it. She didn't care that I loved my corn like it was my pet or something. To her, it was just free food she could grab whenever she felt like it. And the more she took, the madder I got. At first, I was just annoyed, like when your little brother keeps poking you. But then it turned into something bigger. Something hotter. I wasn't just mad, I was furious. Every time I saw her hop that fence, it felt like she was saying, "Ha! You can't stop me, Sam." And that made me want to scream. One day, I decided to try something. I waited until I saw her coming humming that dumb tune again and I ran outside. "Hey!" I yelled, waving my arms like a crazy person. "That's mine. Stop taking it." She didn't even slow down. She plucked a big, juicy cob right off the stalk, held it up like a trophy, and grinned at me. "Oh, Sam," she said, laughing again, "you're so funny when you're mad." Then she waved me off, swatted the air like I was a bug and walked away. I kicked the dirt so hard a cloud of dust flew up around me. Funny. Funny. I wasn't trying to be funny. I was trying to protect what was mine. After that, I started watching her closer. I'd sit by my window after school, peeking through the curtains, waiting for her to show up. And she always did. Always. It was like clockwork. Every day, when the sun started to sink and the sky turned all orange and purple, there she'd be. Hum, 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 over the fence she'd go, quick as a cat. She'd grab a few cobs, sometimes more, and hop back to her side. I'd watch her sit on her porch, eating my corn, smiling like she'd won some big prize. It drove me nuts. My best friend, Tim, came over one afternoon, and he saw it happen too. We were playing catch in the yard when Karen showed up. She didn't even wait for us to turn around. She just climbed over, started picking, and hummed away. Tim dropped the ball and stared. "Sam," he whispered, "she's taking your corn again." I nodded, my jaw tight. "Yup," I said. "She does it every day." Tim's eyes got big. "Why don't you stop her?" he asked. I shrugged and kicked a rock. "I've tried. She doesn't listen." Tim watched her walk off, then turned to me. "That's not fair," he said. "You grew that corn. It's yours." I nodded again. "I know," I said. "But she doesn't care." Tim frowned and picked up the ball. "You gotta do something, Sam," he said. "She can't keep getting away with it." I didn't say anything back, but inside, I was thinking. Thinking hard. Tim was right. It wasn't fair. And I wasn't gonna let it keep happening. That's when I started noticing little things about her. Like how she always came at sunset. Every single time. The sun would dip low, the birds would start chirping quieter, and boom, Karen would appear. It was like she had a schedule. I'd watch her from my window, my nose pressed against the glass, counting the minutes. 5 o'clock. 5:30. 6. Then, right when the sky got all pretty, she'd show up. Humming. Picking. Smirking. I started keeping track in my head. Sunset. Always sunset. That's when she thought I wasn't paying attention. That's when she thought she was safe. But she wasn't safe. Not anymore. Because I was done. Done yelling. Done asking her to stop. Done watching her take what was mine. The more I thought about it, the clearer it got I wasn't gonna let her win this time. She thought she was so smart, so sneaky, so bold. She thought I was just some kid who'd give up. But I wasn't. I was Sam. And Sam doesn't give up. I didn't know exactly what I was gonna do yet. Not the whole plan. But I knew one thing for sure, I was gonna fight back. Not with my fists or with shouting. Nope. I was gonna be smarter than that. I was gonna catch her when she least expected it. I was gonna make her wish she'd never touched my corn. Sunset. Oh, she loved sunset. But soon, sunset was gonna be her worst enemy. She didn't know it yet, but I was watching. I was waiting. And I was ready. Karen thought she had me beat. She thought she could keep waltzing in, humming her song, and taking my stuff forever. But she was wrong. So wrong. Because this time, I wasn't just gonna sit there. This time, I was gonna win. And oh boy, it was gonna be good. Alright, so where were we? Oh yeah, Karen was driving me nuts, and I was done letting her win. She wasn't just annoying anymore, she was bold, like super duper bold. She'd stroll right into my yard like it was her own personal grocery store, picking my corn and humming that loud, happy tune. No hiding. No whispering. Just pure, loud, in-your-face stealing. And every time I saw her do it, my tummy twisted up tighter, like a rope getting all knotted. One afternoon, I was out in my yard, just checking on my plants. I liked doing that, it made me feel proud. I'd walk up and down the rows, touching the green leaves, making sure my corn was growing strong. The sun was still high, so I wasn't expecting her yet. But then I heard it. That song. I whipped my head around, and there she was, early for once. Karen was already over the fence, her hands grabbing at my corn like she couldn't wait another second. I dropped the watering can I was holding, and water splashed all over my feet. "Hey!" I yelled, stomping toward her. "That's mine. Stop it." She didn't even look surprised. She just turned her head a little, gave me that big, smug grin, and laughed. "Oh, Sam," she said, her voice all sing-songy, "you're so loud about this stuff." Then she waved her hand at me again, swish, swish, like I was some buzzing mosquito she could shoo away. She grabbed 2 more cobs, tucked them under her arm, and started walking back to her yard. I stood there, my wet sneakers squishing in the mud, watching her go. Loud. Loud. I wasn't loud. I was mad. And she didn't care one bit. I ran inside to tell my mom again. She was in the living room, folding laundry on the couch. "Mom," I said, my voice all high and squeaky. "Karen's back." She took more corn, and she laughed at me. Mom looked up, her eyebrows squishing together like she was thinking hard. "Sam," she said, real slow, "I think she's just lonely. Maybe she doesn't have friends to talk to." I threw my hands up in the air. "Lonely people don't steal, Mom," I said. "They don't laugh when you yell at them. She's not lonely, she's mean." Mom sighed and went back to folding a towel. Well, she said, maybe she likes the corn so much she can't help herself. I stared at her, my mouth open. Couldn't help herself? Couldn't help herself. That was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. If she liked it so much, she could ask me for some. I'd say no, but at least she could try. I stomped out of the room, my wet shoes leaving little muddy prints on the floor. Mom called after me, "Don't track dirt in here," but I didn't care. I was too mad to care. Later that day, I went back to my window to watch her. I pulled up a chair, sat down, and peeked through the curtains. The sun was starting to set now, turning the sky all pink and orange. That's when she usually came sunset. And sure enough, there she was again. Hum, hum, hum. She hopped the fence like it was nothing, her sneakers barely making a sound. She grabbed a big cob, then another, then another. She was fast, like a squirrel snatching nuts. I leaned closer to the glass, my breath fogging it up. She didn't even look my way. She just kept humming, kept picking, kept winning. "You've got plenty," she'd always say when I caught her. That's what she told me again the next day when I ran out to stop her. "Plenty?" I shouted, my voice cracking a little. "I don't have plenty. I grew this all summer." She smirked, holding a cob up like it was a prize. "Oh, Sam," she said, "you've got a whole garden. What's a few pieces to me?" Then she laughed that sharp, mean laugh and waved me off again. I watched her walk away, my hands balled up so tight my nails dug into my palms. A few pieces. A few pieces. She didn't take a few. She took tons. Every day, she took more, and every day, I had less. I'd worked so hard on that garden. All summer long, I was out there. When it was hot and sweaty, I'd carry water to my plants. When it rained, I'd put little covers over them so they wouldn't drown. I'd sit in the dirt, picking out weeds, my knees all brown and scratched. My corn wasn't just food, it was mine. My project. My thing. And Karen? She didn't care about any of that. She didn't care that I'd spent hours out there. She didn't care that I loved it. She just took it, like it was nothing. The more she took, the madder I got. At first, it was just a little mad, like when you lose a game you really wanted to win. But then it grew. It got bigger and bigger, like a balloon filling up with air. Every time I saw her hop that fence, every time I heard that dumb humming, the balloon got tighter. I'd lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about it. I'd hear her voice in my head, "You've got plenty," and I'd grit my teeth. Plenty? No. I didn't have plenty anymore. She was taking it all. One time, I tried to catch her in the act again. I hid behind my shed, crouching down low so she wouldn't see me. The sun was setting, and the air smelled like grass and dirt. I waited, holding my breath, listening. Then she was there. I peeked out and saw her climbing over, her hands reaching for my corn. I jumped up and ran at her. "Hey!" I yelled. "Stop it! That's mine." She didn't even jump. She just turned, grinned, and said, "Oh, Sam, you're so silly." Silly? Silly? I wasn't silly. I was serious. But she laughed, grabbed another cob, and left. I kicked the shed so hard my toe hurt. My friend Tim came over the next day. We were sitting on my porch, eating cookies, when Karen showed up again. Hum, over the fence she went. Tim's jaw dropped. "She's doing it right now," he said, pointing. "Yup," I said, my cookie crumbling in my hand from squeezing it too hard. "She never stops." Tim shook his head. "That's not right, Sam," he said. "You gotta do something." I nodded, slow and quiet. "I know," I said. "I'm gonna." That's when I started really watching her. I mean, really watching. I'd sit by my window every day, my chin on my hand, staring out at the garden. I noticed stuff. Like how she always came at sunset. Every time. The sun would go down, the sky would get pretty, and boom, Karen would be there. I started counting the days. Monday. Sunset. Tuesday. Sunset. Wednesday. Sunset again. It was like she had a secret timer in her head. She'd wait until the light was soft and golden, then she'd strike. I even wrote it down once. I grabbed a pencil and an old notebook and scribbled, "Karen Sunset." I wanted to be sure. And I was right. Every night, same time, same humming, same stealing. She thought I didn't notice. She thought I was too busy or too dumb to care. But I wasn't. I was paying attention. I was learning her tricks. And I was getting ready. See, I wasn't gonna let her win this time. No way. She thought she could keep taking my corn forever, laughing at me, waving me off like I was nothing. But I wasn't nothing. I was Sam. And Sam doesn't just sit there. Sam fights back. I didn't know how yet, not the full plan, but I knew one thing: I was done losing. Sunset was her time, sure. But soon, sunset was gonna be my time. She didn't see it coming. She didn't have a clue. And that made me smile, just a little, as I watched her from my window, humming away. Okay, so Karen was still being her sneaky, bold self, and I, Sam, was getting madder every day. Days went by, lots of days, and she didn't stop. Not even a little. She kept hopping over my fence at sunset, humming that loud tune, and taking my corn like it was hers. Hum, hum, hum. She'd grab a cob or two, sometimes more, and waltz back to her yard with that big, smug grin. I'd watch from my window, my nose pressed against the glass, feeling my tummy twist up tighter and tighter. She thought she was winning. She thought I'd never do anything. But oh boy, was she wrong. One time, she went way too far. Way too far. It was a Saturday, and I was outside playing with my dog, Rusty. He's a little brown mutt who loves chasing sticks. We were having fun, laughing and running around, when I heard it hum, hum, hum. I turned my head, and there she was. Karen. But this time, she didn't just take a few cobs. Oh no. She had a big straw basket slung over her arm, and she was stuffing it full of my corn. Full. She yanked one cob after another, piling them up like she was harvesting her own garden. Rusty barked at her, but she didn't care. She just kept going, humming away. I ran over, my sneakers pounding the grass. Hey! I yelled. What are you doing? She looked up, not even surprised, and smirked. Oh, Sam, she said, I'm just getting some corn for my friends. It's so good, you know. Then she turned and walked off, the basket swinging by her side, stuffed to the top with my corn. I stood there, my mouth open, watching her go. Rusty barked again, but she was already over the fence, heading to her house. Later that day, I saw something that made my blood boil. Really boil, like water bubbling in a pot. I peeked out my window and saw Karen on her porch with 3 of her friends. They were all sitting in chairs, laughing and eating my corn. My corn. She was holding up a cob, waving it around like a prize, and I could hear her voice loud and clear. This is my amazing corn, she said. I grew it myself, and it's the best in town. Her friends nodded and smiled, munching away. Wow, Karen, one of them said, you're so good at gardening. My hands clenched into fists. Her amazing corn. Her amazing corn. She didn't grow it. I did. I spent all summer digging, planting, watering, and weeding. Not her. She didn't do a single thing except steal it. I wanted to run out there and yell, that's mine. You're a liar. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. I pressed my forehead against the window and watched, my breath fogging up the glass. I was so mad I could feel my face turning red, but I didn't say a word. Not yet. Because something was starting to happen in my head. I was plotting. See, I wasn't just gonna sit there and let her keep winning. Nope. I was done being mad and doing nothing. Karen thought she was so smart, bragging to her friends, taking my corn like it was a game. But games have tricks, right? And I was about to play one. A big one. I'd heard about this stuff at the store, super spicy popcorn. Like, super duper spicy. The kind so hot it made grown ups cry and chug water like crazy. My friend Tim told me about it once. He said his uncle tried it and turned all red, coughing and yelling, too hot. Too hot. I laughed when he told me, but now it wasn't just funny. It was perfect. I started thinking, what if I tricked her? What if I made her think she was grabbing my corn, but instead, she got something else? Something hot. Something sneaky. The idea popped into my head like a light bulb turning on, and I couldn't stop smiling. Karen wouldn't know what hit her. She'd take one big bite, expecting my sweet, crunchy corn, and bam, she'd get a mouthful of fire instead. Oh, it was gonna be good. So good. The next day, I grabbed my bike and rode to the store. My allowance money jingled in my pocket, $2 I'd saved from mowing Mr. Jenkins' lawn. I parked my bike outside, ran in, and found it, a bright red bag of blazing hot popcorn. The label had flames on it and big letters that said, "Warning, super spicy." I held it up, grinning like a goof. This was it. This was my weapon. I paid the cashier, a nice lady with glasses, who asked, "You sure you want this, kid? It's hot." And I nodded. "Yup," I said. "It's for a project." She laughed and gave me my change. When I got home, I ran to the kitchen. Mom was at work, so I had the place to myself. I ripped open the bag, and whoa, that spicy smell hit me right away. It was strong, like peppers and fire mixed together. I popped the popcorn in the microwave, beep, 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 and waited. The kitchen filled with that hot, spicy smell, and when it was done, I poured it into a bowl. It was red and shiny, like little spicy jewels. I didn't dare try it. No way. I'd seen Tim's uncle cry, and I wasn't gonna be next. But I couldn't just give her popcorn. She'd know something was up. Karen wasn't that dumb. She'd see it wasn't corn and laugh at me. I had to be sneakier. So I got an idea. I'd make fake corn. Yup, fake corn. I grabbed some dough from the fridge, Mom keeps it for biscuits, and started squishing it in my hands. It was soft and sticky, and I shaped it into little corn cob shapes. I made them long and skinny, like my real corn, and poked little holes in them with a fork to look like kernels. They weren't perfect, but they were close. Close enough to fool someone who wasn't looking too hard. Then came the fun part. I took the spicy popcorn and sprinkled it all over the dough cobs. I mashed it in with my fingers, sticking those hot little pieces into the fake corn so it looked real. The red spice stuck to the dough, and when I was done, I held one up. It looked good. Like, really good. From far away, you'd think it was my sweet corn, fresh from the garden. But up close, it smelled like fire. I giggled to myself, imagining Karen's face when she bit into it. She'd never see it coming. I made 5 fake cobs, just enough to trick her. Then I carried them outside, careful not to drop them. The sun was setting, turning the sky all orange and pretty. Perfect timing. Karen always came at sunset, and I knew she'd be here soon. I walked to my garden, grinning like a sneaky fox, and put the fake corn right where she'd grab it. I stuck them on some empty stalks I'd cleared out, pushing them down so they'd stay. They blended in with the real corn, and unless you sniffed super close, you'd never know the difference. I stepped back, looked at my work, and nodded. "Gotcha, Karen," I whispered. Then I hid. I ran behind the shed, crouching down low in the grass. My heart was thumping fast, like a drum in my chest. I peeked out, watching the garden, waiting for her. The air was cool, and the birds were chirping their last songs of the day. I held my breath, listening. Would she come? Would she fall for it? I didn't have to wait long. Hum, 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 I heard it. That tune. She was here. I peeked around the shed and saw her. Karen, hopping the fence like always, her hands already reaching out. She didn't see me. She didn't suspect a thing. She walked right up to my garden, humming loud and happy, and stopped at the spot with the fake corn. My grin got bigger. She had no idea what was coming. No idea at all. She reached out, her fingers wiggling, ready to grab. I bit my lip to keep from laughing. This was it. The trick was set. The trap was ready. And Karen? She was walking right into it. Days had gone by with her stealing and bragging, but now it was my turn. I stayed quiet, plotting, watching, waiting. That spicy popcorn was my secret weapon, and those fake cobs were my masterpiece. She thought she was so smart, so bold, so unbeatable. But I was smarter. I was sneakier. And soon, she'd find out what happens when you mess with Sam's corn. Oh, this was gonna be good. So good. Alright, so Karen was still at it, and I, Sam, was ready to turn the tables. Days had gone by, tons of days, and she didn't slow down one bit. She kept sneaking into my garden, taking my corn like it was her own little treasure chest. She'd hop the fence at sunset, humming that loud, annoying tune hum hum hum, and grab whatever she wanted. I'd watch her from my window, my hands clenched, my tummy twisting up like a pretzel. She thought she could keep doing it forever. She thought I'd never fight back. But I was done just watching. I was plotting something big, and it was gonna be awesome. One day, she took it way too far. Like, farther than ever before. It was a bright, sunny Saturday, and I was out in the yard with my dog, Rusty. He's a scruffy little guy with floppy ears, and we were playing fetch. I'd throw a stick, he'd run after it, and then he'd bring it back, wagging his tail like crazy. We were having the best time. The sun was shining, the grass was soft under my feet, and I was laughing every time Rusty tripped over his own paws. Then hum, I heard it. That sound. My smile dropped, and I spun around. There she was. Karen. This time, she wasn't messing around. She didn't just grab one or two cobs like usual. Nope. She had a big straw basket hanging on her arm, and she was loading it up. She yanked corn off my plant, snap, 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 stuffing that basket so full it looked like it might burst. Rusty barked at her, his little yips echoing across the yard, but she didn't even blink. She just kept picking, humming louder, like she was daring me to stop her. I dropped the stick I was holding and ran over, my sneakers kicking up dirt. Hey! I shouted. What are you doing with all that? She looked up at me, her eyes all sparkly with mischief, and grinned. Oh, Sam, she said, her voice all sweet and fake, I'm just taking some corn for my friends. It's so yummy, and they love it. Then she patted the basket, turned around, and walked off, humming away like she'd won a prize at the fair. I stood there, Rusty barking at my side, my mouth hanging open. For her friends. For her friends. That wasn't just a little stealing, that was a whole heist. She took half my garden in one go. I couldn't let it go. Not this time. Later that afternoon, I peeked out my window to see what she was up to. And oh boy, what I saw made me so mad I could have punched a pillow. Karen was on her porch with 3 of her buddies. They were all sitting in chairs, giggling and chatting, and guess what they were eating? My corn. She was holding up a big, juicy cob, waving it around like it was a trophy. This is my amazing corn, she said, loud enough for me to hear through the glass. I grew it myself, and it's the best in town. Her friends oh'd and awed, taking big bites. Wow, Karen, one of them said, you're such a great gardener. My blood boiled. Like, really boiled, like soup bubbling over on the stove. Her amazing corn. She grew it. That was a lie. A big, fat lie. I grew that corn. I spent all summer digging holes, planting seeds, watering them every day, and pulling out weeds with my bare hands. Not her. She didn't lift a finger except to steal it. I wanted to run out there, shake my fists, and yell, that's mine, you big faker. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. I leaned against the window, my forehead smooshed on the glass, and watched. I was so mad my hands were shaking, but I didn't say a peep. Because right then, something clicked in my brain. I wasn't just gonna get mad. I was gonna get even. See, I'd heard about this thing, the super spicy popcorn they sold at the store. Tim, my best buddy, told me about it a while back. He said his uncle tried it once and turned all red, coughing and yelling, water. Water, because it was so hot it burned his mouth. I thought it was hilarious then, but now it was more than funny. It was perfect. What if I tricked her? What if I made her think she was grabbing my sweet corn, but instead, she got a big surprise. A spicy surprise. The idea hit me like a soccer ball to the head, and I couldn't stop grinning. Oh, Karen was in for it now. The next day, I jumped on my bike and pedaled to the store as fast as I could. My allowance money, $2 from mowing lawns, was jangling in my pocket. I locked my bike outside, ran in, and found it, a shiny red bag of blazing hot popcorn. The bag had big flames on it and words that said, "Warning, really hot." I grabbed it, my heart racing with excitement. This was it. My secret weapon. The cashier lady, she had curly hair and a funny smile, looked at me and said, "You sure, kid? This stuff's spicy." I nodded, trying not to laugh. "Yup," I said. "It's for something special." She chuckled and handed me my change. When I got home, Mom was still at work, so I had the kitchen all to myself. I tore open the bag, and whoa, that smell. It was like peppers and hot sauce and fire all mixed up. My eyes watered just sniffing it. I popped it in the microwave, beep, 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 and waited. The kitchen got all warm and spicy smelling, and when it was done, I dumped it into a bowl. The popcorn was bright red, like little hot coals, and it looked dangerous. I wasn't gonna taste it, no way. I'd seen what it did to Tim's uncle, and I wasn't about to cry over it. But for Karen? Oh, it was perfect. I couldn't just leave it as popcorn, though. She'd see it and know something was up. Karen was sneaky, not stupid. So I got crafty. I ran to the fridge and grabbed some dough. Mom keeps it for making rolls. It was cold and squishy, and I plopped it on the counter. I started shaping it with my hands, rolling it into long, skinny pieces like corn cobs. I squished it and poked it with a spoon to make little bumps, like kernels. They weren't super pretty, but they looked close enough. Real enough to trick someone who was in a hurry like Karen. Then I grabbed the spicy popcorn and got to work. I sprinkled it all over the dough cobs, pushing the red pieces into the surface with my fingers. The spice stuck to the dough, turning it all reddish and rough. I held one up and squinted at it. Yup, it looked like my corn. From a little ways away, you'd never guess it wasn't real. But if you got close, you'd smell that heat. I giggled, picturing Karen's face when she took a bite. She'd be expecting sweet and crunchy, but boom, she'd get fire instead. It was gonna be the best trick ever. I made a bunch, 5 fake cobs, just enough to set the trap. Then I sneaked outside. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky all orange and pink. Sunset. Karen's favorite time. I tiptoed to my garden, holding the fake corn tight so it wouldn't fall apart. I found some empty stalks where she'd already picked, and I stuck the dough cobs on them, pushing them down so they'd stay put. They blended right in with the real corn. Unless you were super smart or sniffed real close, you'd never know. I stepped back, hands on my hips, and grinned. "Perfect," I whispered. Then I hid. I darted behind the shed, crouching in the grass so she wouldn't see me. My heart was going thump thump thump, fast and loud. I peeked out, watching the garden, waiting. The air was cooling off, and the crickets were starting to chirp. Would she come? Would she fall for it? I didn't wait long. Hum, there it was. Her song. I peeked around the shed and saw her shadow by the fence. Karen. She was here. She hopped over, quick and quiet, her hands already reaching out. She didn't look around. She didn't suspect a thing. She walked straight to the spot with the fake corn, humming like always. My grin got so big it hurt my cheeks. She had no clue. No clue at all. She stopped, her fingers wiggling, ready to grab. I held my breath, trying not to laugh. This was it. My plan was rolling. The spicy trap was set. And Karen? She was about to find out what happens when you mess with Sam. Days had gone by with her stealing and bragging, but now the game was changing. I'd stayed quiet, plotting, building my trick bit by bit. That popcorn was my secret, and those fake cobs were my genius move. She thought she was unbeatable, but I was ready to surprise her. And oh, it was gonna be so good. Karen was bold. Too bold. And I was gonna show her that bold doesn't always win. Not when you mess with me. Alright, so here we are, the big moment. Sam, had set my trap, and Karen was about to walk right into it. The next evening, after I'd made my sneaky fake corn with that super spicy popcorn, I was ready. I couldn't wait to see what happened. My tummy was all fluttery with excitement, like when you're about to go down a big slide. I grabbed a quick snack, an apple from the kitchen so mom wouldn't ask why I was going outside. Then I ran to the backyard, my sneakers slapping the ground, and hid behind the shed. It was the perfect spot. The shed was big and wooden, with peeling brown paint, and it sat right next to my garden. I crouched down low in the grass, peeking out just enough to see everything. The sun was setting, turning the sky all orange and pink and purple. It was pretty, but I wasn't there to look at the sky. Nope. I was waiting for her. Karen. She always came at sunset every single day, like clockwork. I'd watched her enough to know her tricks. She'd hop the fence, hum her little song, and grab my corn like it was hers. But not tonight. Tonight was different. Tonight, she was gonna get a big surprise. My fake corn was sitting there in the garden, stuck on the stalks, looking so real you'd never guess it was dough and spice. I grinned to myself, hiding behind the shed, my heart going thump thump thump. This was it. I waited. The air was cool, and the crickets were starting to chirp. I pulled my knees up to my chest and peeked around the corner of the shed, keeping my eyes on the fence. My garden looked normal, just rows of green stalks with yellow cobs poking out. But some of those cobs, they were my secret weapon. I'd sprinkled that blazing hot popcorn all over them, and they were ready to trick her. I bit my lip to keep from giggling. She had no idea. No idea at all. Then I heard it hum, hum, hum. That tune. Her tune. My head snapped up, and I saw her. Karen. She was coming. She hopped over the fence, quick as a bunny, landing on my side with a little thud. She didn't look around. She didn't check if anyone was watching. She just waltzed right in, her hands already out, ready to grab. She was wearing her usual stuff, a blue shirt and sneakers, and her hair was bouncing as she walked. She looked so sure of herself, like she owned the place. Her greedy hands reached for my corn, wiggling her fingers like she couldn't wait to get them. I held my breath, peeking out from behind the shed. She stopped at the spot where I'd put the fake cobs. They were right in front, easy to grab, just how she liked it. She didn't even pause. She grabbed a big piece, one of my dough cobs covered in spicy popcorn, and held it up like a prize. Her humming got louder, hum, 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 like she was so happy to have it. I could see her big, smug grin from where I was hiding. She thought she'd won again. She thought it was my sweet, crunchy corn, just like always. Then she did it. She took a huge bite. Chomp. Her teeth sank right into it, and for one tiny second, everything was quiet. I watched, my eyes wide, waiting. Then boom. It hit her. Her eyes popped open, big as saucers. Her face turned red, redder than a tomato, redder than a fire truck, redder than anything I'd ever seen. She froze, her mouth still full, and then she started coughing. Loud, wild coughs, like she'd swallowed a bug or something. She dropped the fake corn, and it bounced on the ground. Her hands started waving around like crazy, like a bird flapping its wings, trying to fly away. Water! Water, she yelled, her voice all scratchy and high. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I laughed, quiet at first, but then louder. This was it. My trick worked. She was hopping around, coughing and choking, her face all scrunched up. She fanned her mouth with her hands, like that would help, and kept shouting, water. Oh my gosh, water. Her tongue stuck out, and she was panting like Rusty after a long run. Tears started running down her cheeks, not sad tears, but spicy tears, the kind that come when your mouth's on fire. She looked so silly, I almost fell over laughing. That's when I decided to step out. I stood up from behind the shed, brushing the grass off my knees, and walked over with my arms crossed. I tried to look cool, like I wasn't about to burst with giggles. Oh, hey, Karen, I said, my voice all calm and smooth. Like my new corn. She stopped hopping for a second and turned to me. Her eyes were all watery, and her mouth was open, still coughing. When she saw me standing there, her jaw dropped even more. You, she sputtered, pointing at me with one shaky hand. She tried to say something else, but all that came out was more coughs. Hack, hack, hack. I tilted my head and smiled, cool as a cucumber. Yup, me, I said. That's what you get for stealing. She blinked at me, her face still red, tears streaming down her cheeks. She couldn't even argue. Couldn't yell back. Couldn't call me a baby or wave me off like usual. She just stood there, choking on the spice, looking like she'd seen a ghost. Then zoom, she turned and ran. She bolted back to the fence, climbed over it faster than I'd ever seen, and disappeared into her yard. I could hear her coughing all the way to her house, fading off into the distance. I walked over to where she'd dropped the fake corn. It was lying in the dirt, a big bite taken out of it. I picked it up and sniffed it. Yup, that spicy smell was still there, strong and hot. I tossed it back on the ground and looked around. The garden was quiet again. The sun was almost gone, just a little sliver of orange left in the sky. I stood there, arms crossed, feeling like a superhero. Karen was gone. My trick had worked. And oh boy, it felt good. She'd hopped that fence so many times, thinking she was so smart, so sneaky. She'd grabbed my corn, bragged to her friends, laughed at me like I was nothing. But not this time. This time, I won. That super spicy popcorn was my secret weapon, and those fake cobs were my perfect trap. She took one bite, boom, and it all fell apart for her. Her greedy hands didn't get sweet corn tonight. They got a big, hot surprise. I stayed out there a little longer, just looking at my garden. The real corn was still there, safe and sound. Karen wouldn't be back tonight, that was for sure. I could still hear her in my head, yelling water. Water, and it made me giggle again. Her face all red and shocked was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. She didn't know I'd been plotting. She didn't know I'd been watching. She thought I was just some kid who'd let her win forever. But nope. I was Sam. And Sam doesn't give up. The shed stood quiet behind me, and the crickets kept chirping. I took a deep breath, smelling the grass and the dirt and a tiny hint of that spicy popcorn still in the air. My heart wasn't thumping anymore, it was calm now. I'd done it. I'd beat her at her own game. She ran home, tears streaming, and I stayed here, the winner. This was my garden. My corn. And now she knew it. Okay, so the big spicy trick was done, and wow, what a show. Karen ran off, coughing and crying, and I, Sam, stood there in my garden feeling like the king of the world. After that night, after her face turned red and she yelled for water, things changed. Big time. Karen never touched my corn again. Not once. Not a single cob. It was like the spicy popcorn scared her away for good, and I was so happy I could have danced right there in the dirt. The next morning, I woke up early, like always, and ran to my window to check the garden. I peeked out, holding my breath, waiting to see if she'd try sneaking over again. But nope, nothing. The fence was quiet. No humming, no hopping, no Karen. I grinned so big my cheeks hurt. My corn was still there, all safe and sound, swaying in the breeze like it was saying, "Thanks, Sam." I grabbed my shoes, ran outside, and walked through the rows, touching the stalks with my fingers. It felt good. Really good. My garden was mine again. Word about the spicy popcorn trick spread fast like wildfire. By lunchtime that day, my best friend Tim already knew. I was eating a peanut butter sandwich on the back porch when he rode up on his bike, his eyes all wide. "Sam," he shouted, jumping off and running over. "Did you really trick Karen with spicy popcorn?" I nodded, swallowing a big bite. "Yup," I said, cool as could be. She took one chomp, and boom, she was yelling for water. Tim laughed so hard he almost fell over. "That's the best thing ever," he said. "You're a genius." He didn't stop talking about it. When we went back to school on Monday, Tim told everyone. I walked into class, and kids were whispering and pointing at me. Not in a mean way, in a cool way. At recess, a bunch of them ran up to me on the playground. "Sam, is it true," asked Jenny, this girl with pigtails who always carries a jump rope. "Did you really make Karen eat spicy stuff?" I shrugged, trying not to smile too big. "Yeah," I said. "She kept stealing my corn, so I fixed her." They all cheered. "You're a hero," said Mike, a kid with glasses who loves comic books. "Like a superhero with a garden." I felt my face get warm, but I liked it. Kids I didn't even know came up to me all day. Tell us about the spicy corn, they'd say, and I'd tell the story how I made fake cobs, how Karen's face turned red, how she ran off crying. They laughed every time I got to the water part. By the end of the week, everyone in school knew. Even the teachers heard about it. Mrs. Carter, my math teacher, winked at me in the hall and said, "Smart move, Sam. Very creative." I didn't know what creative meant exactly, but it sounded good, so I just smiled. The story didn't stop at school, though. Oh no. It spread all over town. My mom's friend, Mrs. Jenkins, came over one day with a big plate of cookies. She lives down the street and always smells like flowers. "Sam," she said, handing me the plate, "I heard what you did to Karen with that popcorn. Good for you." I took a cookie chocolate chip, my favorite, and said, "Thanks." She laughed and patted my head. "She won't be bothering your garden anymore," she said, and walked off giggling. I munched the cookie and thought, wow, this is getting huge. Even my mom couldn't believe how fast it spread. That night, we were eating dinner spaghetti and meatballs and she looked at me across the table. "Sam," she said, twirling her fork, "people at work were talking about your spicy trick today. The whole town knows." I stopped chewing, my mouth full of noodles. "Really?" I mumbled. She nodded and laughed. "Yup. Guess she learned her lesson, huh?" I swallowed and grinned. "Yeah," I said. "No more stealing." Mom shook her head, still smiling. "You're something else, kid," she said, and went back to her food. I felt all warm inside, like when you drink hot cocoa on a cold day. My garden was safe now. Totally safe. I could go out there every day and not worry about Karen hopping over. I'd sit on the porch after school, eating my corn sweet and crunchy, just how I liked it, and watch the sun set. The sky would turn all pretty colors, and I'd munch away, feeling peaceful. No more humming. No more sneaky hands. Just me and my corn, like it was supposed to be. I'd worked hard all summer for that garden, digging, planting, watering, and now I could enjoy it. Finally. In peace. Sometimes, I'd see Karen over the fence. Not stealing, just standing there. She'd be in her yard, maybe watering her flowers or sitting on her porch, and she'd look at me. Not a nice look, a glare. Her eyes would squint, and her mouth would get all tight, like she was still mad about the spicy trick. I'd just wave at her, real slow, with a little smile. She'd huff and turn away, stomping back inside. It made me laugh every time. She could glare all she wanted, but she knew better now. She wasn't gonna try anything. Stealing wasn't so fun when it bit back, literally. One day, I caught her looking extra grumpy. I was out picking corn for dinner, and she was raking leaves in her yard. She kept peeking over the fence, her rake scratching the ground loud and fast. I held up a cob and said, "Want some, Karen?" "It's real this time." She froze, her face going pink, not red like before, but pink, and then she threw down her rake and marched inside. I laughed so hard I almost dropped my corn. She didn't say a word, but I knew she was thinking about that spicy bite. She'd never forget it. Kids at school kept talking about it for weeks. They'd run up to me at lunch and say, "Sam, tell the story again." So I would. I'd sit on the picnic table, munching my sandwich, and tell them how I hid behind the shed, how Karen chomped the fake corn, how she flapped her arms like a wild bird. They'd crack up every time, and some of them even started calling me Corn King. I didn't mind, it was kind of cool. Mike even drew a picture of me in art class, wearing a cape made of corn leaves, holding a big cob like a sword. He gave it to me, and I hung it on my wall. It looked awesome. My garden stayed perfect after that. I'd go out every day, checking the stalks, picking the ripe cobs, and watering when it got dry. Rusty would run around, chasing butterflies, and I'd sit there feeling proud. No more missing corn. No more Karen sneaking in. It was all mine again, and I loved it. I'd take some cobs inside and cook them with Mom, boiling them in a pot until they were hot and yummy. We'd sit at the table, butter dripping down our chins, and she'd say, "This is the best corn ever, Sam." I'd nod and say, "Yup, and it's all ours." Karen stayed away, but the town didn't forget. People would smile at me when I rode my bike down the street. "Old Mr. Thompson," who runs the hardware store, waved at me once and said, "You're the popcorn kid, right? Good job." I waved back, feeling big and important. Even the mailman, Mr. Pete, stopped me one day and said, "Heard you taught Karen a lesson. That's some smart thinking." I just shrugged and said, "Thanks," but inside, I was beaming. Life got quiet again, but a good quiet. I could play in my yard, eat my corn, and not worry about anything. Karen still lived next door, and yeah, she'd glare at me sometimes, her eyes all narrow and grumpy, but she didn't dare touch my garden. She'd learned her lesson, just like Mom said. Stealing was her game before, but I flipped it around. That spicy trick showed her I wasn't just some kid she could mess with. I was Sam, and I fought back. So that's how it ended, with my corn safe, my town cheering, and Karen keeping her hands to herself. I'd sit on my porch, watching the sunset, and think about it all. The garden was mine again, and I could enjoy it in peace. Karen knew better now. Stealing's not so fun when it bites back, and boy, did it bite her hard. So, what's the big lesson we can take from this crazy story about Karen and my spicy popcorn trick? Well, it's pretty cool when you think about it. Sometimes, the smartest way to deal with someone who's being sneaky like a thief who keeps taking your stuff is to let them think they're winning. Yep, just let them feel all smart and sneaky for a little while. But then, bam! You surprise them with something they never saw coming, like I did with that super hot popcorn. They bite into it, and suddenly they're jumping around, wishing they never messed with you. Life's funny like that, isn't it? It's like a big game sometimes, and the quiet ones, the people you don't even notice, can end up being the biggest winners. Think about it for a second. Karen thought she was so clever, sneaking into my yard and taking my corn. She probably laughed to herself, thinking, "Oh, Jake won't even notice. I'm too fast and sneaky." But I did notice. I watched her. I waited. And I made a plan. I didn't yell or get mad right away. Nope. I stayed quiet and tricky, like a fox waiting for the right moment. And when that moment came, wow, it was perfect. She got a big surprise, and I got my garden back. That's the thing about life, it's not always the loud people or the bossy ones who come out on top. Sometimes it's the quiet kids, the ones who watch and think and wait for just the right time to do something awesome. Have you ever met someone like that? Maybe a kid in your class who doesn't talk a lot, but then one day they do something so cool that everyone's like, "Whoa, where did that come from?" I bet you have. Like, imagine a boy named Timmy. Timmy's super quiet. He sits in the back of the room, drawing little pictures of dogs in his notebook. Nobody pays much attention to him. They're all busy talking and laughing and playing games at recess. But one day, the teacher says, "We're having a drawing contest. Draw your favorite animal." And guess what? Timmy turns in this amazing picture of a dog. It's so good, it looks like it could jump right off the page and wag its tail. Everyone's shocked. The loud kids who always brag about everything? Their drawings aren't even close. Timmy wins the prize, and suddenly everyone wants to be his friend. See? Quiet doesn't mean weak. Quiet can mean strong in a secret way. That's what happened with me and Karen, too. She didn't think I'd do anything. She thought I was just boring old Jake who wouldn't fight back. But I had a secret weapon, my brain. I used it to come up with a plan that was funny and smart and made her stop stealing. And here's the cool part, you can do that, too. You don't have to be loud or mean to win. You can be clever instead. Maybe someone's being annoying, like taking your pencils or eating your snacks when you're not looking. You don't have to yell at them or tell the teacher right away. You could try something tricky, like putting a fake spider in your pencil box. When they reach in, they'll scream and never touch your stuff again. It's all about being smart and surprising them. Let's talk about surprises for a minute. Surprises are awesome, right? Like when you think you're just getting a plain cupcake, but then you bite into it and oh my gosh, there's chocolate inside. That's what I did to Karen. She thought she was getting yummy corn, but nope, it was spicy popcorn that made her dance around like her mouth was on fire. Surprises can change everything. They make people stop and think. Karen stopped stealing because she didn't want another surprise like that. And I bet she started wondering, what else might Jake do if I try again? That's the power of being sneaky in a good way. You keep people guessing, and they learn to leave you alone. Now, let's imagine something else. What if you were in my shoes? Picture this, you've got a little garden in your backyard, just like I did. Maybe you're growing carrots or strawberries, something you really love. And then your neighbor, let's call him Max, keeps sneaking over and taking them. He's all sly about it, pretending he doesn't know anything when you ask him. "Oh, nope, I didn't see your strawberries," he says with a big grin. What would you do? Would you try a trick like mine? Maybe you'd swap your strawberries for something sour, like little green grapes that taste awful. Then, when Max grabs one and makes a funny face, you could pop out and say, "Hey, Max, how's my new recipe?" He'd probably run away and never come back. What do you think? Would you try a trick like that? I'd love to hear your ideas. Tell me in the comments below what you'd do to stop a sneaky thief. Here's another fun idea. Tricks don't always have to be about food or gardens. They can be about anything. Like, let's say your little brother keeps borrowing your favorite, like your cool toy car, and he never gives it back. You could wait until he's not looking, take the wheels off the car, and leave it on his bed. When he tries to play with it, he'll be so confused. "Why isn't this working?" he'll say. Then you can walk in and go, "Oh, looks like you need to ask me nicely next time." It's not mean, it's just a little lesson. And maybe he'll think twice before taking your stuff again. See how fun that can be? You don't have to fight. You just use your brain and a little bit of silliness. But here's something important to think about: tricks are great, but they work best when you're fair. I didn't hurt Karen. I didn't put something dangerous in that popcorn like rocks or anything crazy. I just made it spicy so she'd learn her lesson and laugh about it later. Well, maybe she didn't laugh, but I sure did. The point is, if you're going to surprise someone, make it something safe and funny. You want them to stop being sneaky, not to get mad forever. Like, if your friend keeps taking your erasers, don't glue them to the desk, that's too much. Maybe draw a silly face on one and say, "This eraser's watching you." They'll giggle and probably stop. It's all about keeping things light and smart. Let's talk about being quiet again, because I think it's so cool. The quiet ones, the ones nobody notices, they're like superheroes in disguise. Think about your favorite superhero. Maybe it's Spider-Man. He's not loud all the time, right? He swings around, sneaky and quick, catching bad guys by surprise. That's what I did with Karen. I was like Spider-Man with popcorn. Or think about Batman. He's super quiet in the shadows, watching everything, and then pow, he saves the day. You don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be awesome. You can be the one who watches and waits and then does something so cool that everyone's amazed. Have you ever felt like the quiet one? Maybe at school or with your friends, you're not the kid who's always talking or shouting. That's okay. Being quiet doesn't mean you're not important. It means you're thinking. It means you're noticing things other people miss. Like, maybe you see that your friend dropped her pencil, and you pick it up for her without saying anything. Or maybe you hear someone say something mean, and instead of arguing, you come up with a way to make it better later. That's power. That's strength. And one day, when the time's right, you'll surprise everyone with how awesome you are, just like I surprised Karen. Let's tell one more little story to make you smile. Imagine a girl named Lily. Lily's super shy. She doesn't talk much at school, and some kids tease her because she's always reading books at lunch instead of playing. They call her Bookworm Lily and laugh. But Lily's got a secret. She's been writing her own story, a big, exciting adventure about pirates and treasure. One day, the teacher says, "Who wants to read something they wrote to the class?" The loud kids all raise their hands, but Lily quietly does, too. She gets up, starts reading, and whoa, her story is so good, everyone's eyes get big. The pirates fight, the treasure sparkles, and the ending is so exciting that the whole class cheers. Even the kids who teased her are clapping. After that, they stop calling her Bookworm and start asking, "Hey, Lily, what happens next in your story?" See? She was quiet, but she had something amazing inside her all along. That's what I want you to remember from my corn adventure. Life's full of Karens, people who think they can take whatever they want and get away with it. But there are Jakes, two people like me and maybe like you, who don't make a big fuss but figure out how to fix things. You don't have to shout or cry or run to someone else for help. You can use your head, come up with a plan, and make things right. And when you do, it feels so good, like eating a big bowl of your favorite ice cream on a hot day. So, what do you think about all this? Would you try a trick like mine if someone was being sneaky with you? Maybe you'd use something funny, like a whoopee cushion under their chair, or something surprising, like a toy frog that jumps out of your lunchbox. I'd love to know. Drop your ideas in the comments below. I read every single one, and they make me smile. Oh, and tell me where you're watching from today. Are you at home, at school, or maybe outside on a sunny day? I want to picture you right now, listening to the story and thinking about all the cool things you could do. Thanks for sticking with me through this whole wild tale. It's been so much fun telling you about Karen and my spicy popcorn revenge. I hope it made you laugh and maybe even gave you some ideas for your own adventures. Life's full of surprises, and you've got the power to make some of your own. Stay clever, stay kind, and don't let the Karens of the world get you down. See you in the next story. Bye for now.